All right, next example. Still the same first step. Always figure out what your constants are. A equals 1. B equals -6. C equals 10. Use the quadratic formula. X equals -b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So -b goes here, plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Double negative for the 6 makes positive. -6 squared is 36. And then 4 times 1 is 4 times 10 is 40. So this is minus 40 over 2. This simplifies to 6 plus or minus the square root of -4 over 2. Then up to this point, you've probably said, well, it's a negative square root. We can't do that. Doesn't work. But now that we've learned about imaginary numbers, we can. This is going to be equal to 6 plus or minus I times the square root of 4 over 2. Square root of 4 is 2. So this is 6 plus or minus 2i over 2. And then if we can make a heart or bunny ears, which we can here, we can simplify. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Oops. 2i divided by 2 is just 1, or just I. So if you want to write two different solutions because it'll make you feel better, you can write 3 plus I or 3 minus I. But this symbol in the middle, the plus or minus symbol, that already implies. So you can rewrite it as two solutions, or you can just leave it as 3 plus or minus I. For the last question, this one will take a little bit longer because it's a word question, but we can model an object being thrown or launched by the function h equals -16t squared plus, that's called v, it's v sub 0 or v naught, v naught times t plus h naught. So the h on the left represents the height, and then t represents time. V naught equals vertical initial velocity. I'll adjust this a little bit. H naught, or h sub 0, equals initial height. So when we read the question on the next slide, we really want to be deliberate about picking out what does each variable represent, especially with the heights, because it's easy to confuse those for what's the height we're solving for, what's the initial height. That's a really easy one to mix up. So a juggler is tossing a ball into the air. The ball leaves the juggler's hand 4.5 feet above the ground and has an initial vertical velocity of 50 feet per second. The juggler catches the ball when it falls back to a height of 3.5 feet. How long is the ball in the air? So I tried to make our bits of information just a little bit different. It says that the ball left the juggler's hand at 4.5 feet above the ground. So when it leaves his hand, that's when he's throwing it up. So that's going to be our initial height, or h naught. We also underline the velocity. So our initial velocity will be 50 feet per second. And then the juggler catches the ball when it falls back to a height of 3.5 feet. So it's asking, the question is asking us how long is the ball in the air. So the variable that we need to solve for is t, and we need to solve for t when our height equals 3.5 feet. So now let's substitute these values in. H equals 3.5. Negative 16t squared plus 50t, because v sub 0 equals 50, and then plus 4.5, because our initial height was 4.5 feet. We need to set one side equal to 0, so we're going to subtract 3.5 from both sides. So we'll have negative 16t squared plus 50t plus 1. So now we're just going to use those steps to using the quadratic equation. A equals negative 16, B equals 50, and C equals 1. Plug it in. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Oops, I accidentally wrote it in. Okay. So negative 50, and again, simplify the discriminant because it's easy to make mistakes when you type things into your calculator. So 50 squared, we get 2,500. Four times negative 16 is negative 64, and then times 1 is still negative 64, but because we're subtracting a negative, we're going to add it. And I say combine as much as you can before you type it into the calculator because it's easy to make mistakes underneath the square root and with typing things in. And because we are actually solving for seconds, we have this equation in a context, we do want to get some decimal values. So the first value we're going to type in is negative 50 plus the square root of 2,564 over negative 32, and then negative 50 minus the square root of 2,564 over negative 32. And let's type these into the calculator. Let me pull it up. So the first thing we want to do, negative 50, but put it in parentheses, and then plus the square root of 2,564, and divide by negative 32. And you can hit enter. So the first solution we get is negative 0.02. Because we're talking about time, we can't use this value. It's extraneous. Let's check the second answer. And here again, it's kind of difficult to type all that back into your calculator. So hit the second key and then hit enter, and it'll bring up the exact same equation that you just typed in. This time you want to change the plus to minus and then hit enter. And now we get 3.14. So T is about 3.14 seconds. All right, good luck.